you take negative criticism I'd take it in a positive way to go out and prove a point.
What is it like to hang out socially with Michael Jordan?
It's like just a competition.
It is.
I just remember how cutthroat he was and how competitive he was.
For me, Michael Jordan was a killer. It didn't matter. He wanted to come in and kill you.
Michael has a streak in him competitively that I've never seen in anyone before. The competitive will and great. I've never seen anything like it.
Competitive drive was one of many pillars that built Michael Jordan. The psychology behind it, quite a story. Not long ago, however, MJ was not elite, let alone a great basketball player. At a young age, Michael's brother Larry was viewed as the prized athlete of the family. "Mom, I really want to be tall," he would say. The growth spurt eventually came in time for his sophomore varsity tryout at Laney High School in Wilmington, North Carolina, where he was one of 50 boys competing. 11 seniors returned, 3 juniors, so tough go for MJ, as it was a rarity for a sophomore, which Michael was at the time, to make the team, especially with a short roster. No player stood taller than 6'3". Jordan, at 5'9", nicknamed Peanut or Shagnut for the shape of his head, and perceived as a better baseball than basketball player, was scouted as a ball handler and mediocre defender. After 2 weeks of tryouts, the coach's final list was posted on the doors of what would later be named Michael J. Jordan Gymnasium. Ironic, I know. That morning, Michael would recall, we all went in there. I had a friend and we went in to look at the list together. His name was on the list. He made it. Mine wasn't. Who was that friend? We'll get into that in a moment. As one could assume, Jordan, devastated. I had to wait until after school to go home. That's when I hurried to my house and I closed the door of my room and I cried so hard. It was all I wanted to play on that team.
You were cut from the team in high school.
Yeah, I mean, that was my sense of motivation. It's how you approach that disappointment.
Using his perceived demotion as a motivation, Jordan bawled. He was so good, in fact, that the JV games were popular and the entire varsity team came early to watch him, including Leroy Smith, that friend who saw the cut list with Michael, a sophomore, who stood at 6'7", so the varsity team desperately needed height. Smith conquered Jordan for varsity, but he noticed that while Jordan had been wildly competitive before he had been cut, after the cut he seemed even more competitive than ever, as if determined that it would never happen again. This was Michael Jordan's manifestation. He secured this feeling, used it as a weapon to achieve greatness. It went hand in hand with his probably bordering on obsessive competitiveness nature. Here's what I mean. At UNC, he felt shaded when not appearing on the SI cover, another chapter in the Leroy Smith novel, so he proved a point to Dean Smith, posting 20 points per in his second and third years. Even with the master motivator Tim Grover with him in Chicago, Jordan remembered the name Leroy Smith during his workout. It pushed him and served as his motivational tool. ESPN wrote, when his airness still travels the world, he checks into hotels under the alias Leroy Smith, the sophomore who beat him out for the last spot on the Laney High School team in 1978. During his time in the NBA, Charlie Murphy, R.I.P., played a fictitious character named Leroy Smith.
He is also credited with being the person responsible for making Michael Jordan the best basketball player of all time.
See, it came down to Mike and I for the final spot on the team, and Coach pulled me aside and was like, Leroy, if you don't play varsity, we're going to have to forfeit the season.
When Jordan left the NBA for baseball in '84, the Bulls had a press conference at the Berto Center. And just take a wild guess who Jordan cited in front of the media. It should be a game that everyone has an opportunity to play, no matter who, Michael Jordan or Leroy Smith. It doesn't matter. Leroy Smith was Michael's main driving force, the catalyst for his addictive galvanization. It led him to score 63 points against the Celtics in the '86 playoffs, the most ever still in a postseason game. It provoked him to lead the league in scoring for 7 straight years, 10 in total. It was a maniacally frenzied yet persistent mindset to never let that happen again. So much so, while calling out Laney basketball head coach Pop Herring for passing on him, MJ invited Leroy Smith to issue this.
When he made the team and I didn't, I wanted to prove not just to Leroy Smith, not just to myself, but to the coach who actually picked Leroy over me,
I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude.
He would state in 1991, "It was good because it made me know what disappointment felt like. And I knew that I didn't want to have that feeling ever again." He never did. 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 14 All-Star games, 32,292 points, and 5 MVPs later. The rest is history, thanks to a 6'7" sophomore named Leroy Smith.